meeting, and we will start with a moment of silence to honor our troops who have died in service to our country and all those serving our country in the armed forces. Okay, thank you. We now stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I think it's right behind you. Yeah, right there too.
Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, the clerk will call the roll.
Richard Anderson, Ron Bergstrom,
Here.
George Bryant, Leo Kukunis,
Here. Christopher
Kananga, Thomas Keys, Marcia King, here, Thomas Lynch, Teresa Martin, here, John Oman,
Here.
Paul Pilcher,
Here.
Anthony Scalise,
Here.
Fred Shope, Charlie Strebel, here, Julia Taylor. Mr. Speaker, we do not have a quorum vote, but we do have 42.5% present.
Delegate from Harwich, Mr. Kukunis, as pointed out in the charter, allows us to discuss issues with a numerical quota, with a numerical quorum, that is, the majority of the individual delegates, but not take any action in the vote. Before we go any further, I'd like to tell the Assembly and those here that unfortunately Diane Thompson, our clerk, is on a medical leave of absence, and she anticipates that she will be out for 3 months. So temporarily, Maggie has searched around and she's found a replacement, Michelle Springer, here, who works for the Cape Cod Commission. We're not going to hold that against her, but she has agreed to. Says who? She has agreed to step in, and at some point when we have a quorum, we're going to have to nominate her and appoint her as clerk. If you remember, the clerk is appointed along with the other officers at the beginning of the year. So, yes, Mark?
I just want to clarify, Mr. Speaker, that the commissioners can hire her so she can effectively start working, and then you're correct, you guys will have to name her as the temporary assistant acting clerk.
Okay, I passed around a card, a get-well card for Diane if you want to sign it, if you haven't already, and hopefully our wishes and prayers go with her, and hopefully she'll be back with us before too long. Okay. I'm not going to take any votes on approvals because I can't. So we will then go right into communications from the Board of Regional Commissioners, who are already in session.
Yes, we are in session, and we have Kevin Galligan here today to address us, and we consider this a joint meeting of the Commissioners and the Assembly of Delegates. And Kevin is going to make a presentation to us on energy efficiency as part of the Cape Cod Compact.
Before that, we'd like to, if you have any other communications, if any of the members of the board have any questions for the commissioners, anything to say. Mark, you have something for us?
I actually have 3 things. 2 things that we are submitting today. We are submitting a resolution for the transfer of the AmeriCorps funding that we put in a lump sum. We do that every year, and then Galligan lets me know how we want to allocate those funds into their appropriate line items. So I'll be submitting that to you as a resolution. And we are also forwarding to the Assembly an ordinance for your consideration. This is the amendments to Chapter G, the Growth Incentive Zone regulations from the Cape Cod Commission. So we're submitting that today for your consideration. And the third thing I wanted to do is one of the things that you have received in your packet and is the year-end, we call it the Treasurer's Report. It looks like this. I do have a few extra copies, so you should have all gotten that in your packet. And I do want to just hand out kind of an introduction to that. It shows you, and that just kind of gives you an introduction as to what the Treasurer's Report does, where it goes, how it's put together, and a little bit on the reserve funds that are in there. I'm sorry, here is some extras if you need them. I don't know if anybody need a copy. Are you all right?
Laying down this end.
And
Yeah, I got it.
so, in terms of the treasurer's report, I like to say, everything from soup to nuts on every one of the funds that the county has control over is in the treasurer's report. It's sent to the Department of Revenue, Local Services every year around August or September, dealing with all of the transactions that finance has dealt with for the previous fiscal year. It's a detailed receipts and expenditures report. It also documents what unpaid bills and salary transfers, if any, were done in the previous fiscal year. And it shows you at the end what the county's debt service schedule is. Most of, all of our debt actually at this point in time is on the septic betterment program. So, and then the report really has a summation of all of the receipt and expenditure activity of the county. And then on the sideways report, this is the one that really shows you everything that took place in fiscal year 2010. All the receipts that we received, both on the general fund, the Cape Cod Commission fund, the sheriff fund, because as you remember, we had the sheriff for about half of last fiscal year. And then as you turn the pages of that, you'll see every other fund, and you see the fund name, fund number and name on the far left, and the receipts and payments out of that fund on the columns on the right, and the ending fund balance. And you see that for every fund that the county has possession and control over. So it's a very useful at year-end report. You can go through it at your leisure and find out just about everything we do. You will see that the sheriff funds all end with a balance of 0, and that's because at that point in time, at the end of the calendar year last year, the sheriff became a function of the state and transferred all the funds that we had for the sheriff to the state. So, and then, I'm sorry they're not numbered, but it's probably page 7 or 8, and it has my signature at the bottom of it. It looks like this. It gives you the year-end balance and what everything looks like for the year-end. In the general fund, the capital projects fund, the Cape Cod Commission fund, and the jail fund. Those are the 4 major funds that we currently operate under. And you see that on the general fund, we ended the year with an unreserved fund balance of $778 about. We managed to cover the reserves that we have, which are the statutory reserve, the encumbrance reserve, the stabilization fund, and the capital improvements reserve. You also see that we did not budget any money in terms of rollover from fiscal year 10 into fiscal year 11. That was the first time in a long, long time that we didn't assume any money left over. So basically we were able to finish the year in the black. We didn't have really any money left over except such as we could put into the reserve funds that we have. That's really all I wanted to say about the year-end report. I'd be happy to answer any questions, or maybe at another meeting when some of the other delegates are present, I can go into this a little bit more detail.
Do you have a question? I was going to ask you to do it all over again, Mark.
That would be simple. That would be simple because I didn't really say that much. But,
you answer my question. We'll do it.
Anyone else have any questions for Mark? A quick question for you, Mark. We received, the delegates received notice of several grants that were given, that we received. One of them was a grant for $117,000 for smoking education.
It's the tobacco control program.
Now, is that a recurring grant?
That is one that we've done every year, but I think what I have to do on that one, if you look at the budget that you approved, there's only 95, 99, so I will have to come back to you guys, I believe, with a supplemental for that, right?
Yeah, but I guess the question is that you said, what is that money used for? How is it physically, what do you do for the money?
Bob pays for Bob Collette's salary, and Bob Collette, as you know, does both 2 things with the tobacco control program. They do an education program, and they do enforcement, I guess is for lack of a better. Basically the sting operations where they use certain people to go in and try to purchase cigarettes at various establishments.
So basically that's what he does?
That's what he does. Okay. That's what they do.
And is that money comes down from some fund like a...
Comes from the tobacco
settlement.
Yes.
All right, anything else from any of the delegates, Tony?
Is $450,000 a lot of money, or is that the standard legal reserve?
I think, Tony, you're talking about our legal reserve under the stabilization fund?
Yeah.
I think it's been that level since we established it after the 2000 charter change. I don't think that one's changed.
Okay. And we try to maintain that level every year?
Yeah, I mean, I guess some people would say, could it be more? Yeah. Could it be less?
Do we need that much in that account? Is that a requirement?
I think it's a prudent level of reserves to have. I think you'd always want to have something in a legal reserve fund. You don't know what you may face out in the future.
It doesn't appear as though we're getting sued as often as we used to. Is that? And I say that, I'm being serious when I say that, because it's no offense to the Cape Cod Commission.
Bill, did you have something to add to that?
Well, I think that we should think about the fact that we have just faced more litigation because the Cape Cod Commission took a position with regards to the wind farm,
Right.
and we're sort of finishing out with that.
And how much did that use? Or how much will it use?
I don't know.
Yeah, I would say, Bill, that you don't point to any one area because it's not really. It's you look at it from we have a $25 million budget or less, and you have say $500,000. So I can't do the math quick in my head, but what is that? 2.5%? Fairly low, I would say, but is it a reasonable reserve level to have? Given Mass General laws and.
We unfortunately face, in my opinion, face a situation where we can't always anticipate what would happen. I think we're pursuing this, Paul, to make sure that it follows the support that the litigation committee has given. You may remember that several years ago we formed a litigation committee that would provide some oversight for legal expenditures so that we wouldn't be placed in a position of frivolous suits. And I think that the litigation committee has indeed done its work. At the same time, the cost of legal services has indeed gone up. So it's a balance between those two things. We're anticipating talking more about this at a future meeting, I think. But it's something that from the time that I've been a commissioner, I've always been concerned about how do we control and manage legal expenses. When I was serving as the commissioner's representative on the Cape Cod Commission, I had great concern that they have the tools with which if somebody came in and let's say opposed a ruling, that they would have the ability to stand up for what they had voted on. So that's all part of it. We're in a very litigious state. But I agree. I have agreed because that's why because I initially had questions on it. But I have agreed that we do need to have what I call a prudently assess the amount that we would need for what I would call we're not anticipated, but what our expectations would be. Well, no, the unintended consequences come out after we really go through something. I'm confident that the amount that we've asked for is not unreasonable in terms of what we think we need in order to operate a $25 million a year operation.
Anything else? Well, this is a joint meeting, so I'm going to turn it over to the chair of the George, did you have something?
On the last page where the table indicates where the funds are invested, who makes a decision for the county to deal exclusively with the Canadian bank?
Well, as you know, George, that Canadian bank used to be a Cape Cod bank, and we have certain restrictions as to what we can operate with, but mostly it's a service issue. We had some issues, I would say, with that bank shortly after the transition. They worked their issues out, and I think we've been very happy with the service that we've got. So,
I mean, you think you can't deal with Bank of America?
Well, we don't see a reason to change at this point in time. There's not any reason for us to change. We're happy with this bank.
Do they, does Bank North give you special rates?
We're happy with the service.
No Buy American policy?
No, we do. Yeah. That would be a tough policy to enforce for a lot of this.
I've asked this question before, and it goes on and on. I think there's a flaw there myself.
I see where George is going with this. I just wondered if banks, the county, and I think the Assembly and the Commissioners are committed to regional economic development. So the question is, do we deal with banks that lend locally and add to the local economic development? Are we sending the money off to somebody who's doing mega loans in New York City or investing with Madoff and stuff? I don't know if you know the answer to that question, but do they give you a report to say how much money is spent on the Cape?
Certainly ask them, but
I know there are certain federal requirements as to how much has to be spent on it, but I just wondered if they go beyond that.
No, there are no federal requirements with how much has to be spent locally.
Not for us, but I mean for the banks. So maybe one more.
Oh, yeah.
The Community Reinvestment Act.
Several years ago, we did invite banks to, let's say, to compete for our business.
No, we haven't done that in a long time.
But when we did do that, I believe that
we haven't done that since that was Cape Cod Bank and Trust.
But when we did do that, the proposals, I believe, pointed towards the bank that we chose as being the one that would provide the very better service.
When it was Cape Cod Bank and Trust.
Okay. Anything else? If not, Mr. Chairman?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. At this time, I would like to introduce Kevin Galligan from the Compact. He's going to talk about energy efficiencies. Kevin,
Thank
so
you.
glad to have you with us.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair.
Good topic at
Speaker.
this point.
You live here, right?
I live, welcome to my town.
Yes.
And it's a great venue. Wish more people would show up, but at the same time, it is fortunate this is being taped, so for the listening audience, I'll also try to speak up. But also, thanks to Maggie Downey, our administrator of the Compact. She's handing out just a brief presentation, number one, to keep me on point, as well as to provide some take-home for you as well. But if any folks saw the Cape Cod Times this morning, front page below the fold, there was a very nice article about a participant in our program. So I can make this a short presentation, say read the paper and let's go eat. But
thank you for coming.
Marsha, I'm with you. But it was really the best way to recap, how we really promote our programs to encourage people to take the first step, whether it's a compact fluorescent bulb, and then go further, because as the article said, sometimes this is confusing for people. Fortunately, we have a local resource through the support of the county and you folks that we live here, we work here, we generally know our businesses, and we've got a great record of service. So I want to be able to kind of recap results to date, number one. Number two, talk a little bit about our new programs under our 3-year plan that is really striving to go deeper, meaning how can we harvest even more energy savings out of our businesses and homes than we have in the past, and along the theme of 3 points on the agenda and 3 takeaway points, just to kind of leave us with in terms of thoughts on energy efficiency. So if you turn the page, the slide number 2, results year to date, and this is looking at just the past 9 years of service, and we report our annual activity for the previous year around the July-August time frame. So again, we continue to deliver extremely cost-effective programs. So what that means is every one of the dollars that we administer on your behalf, you meaning all the ratepayers, we're delivering back in highly cost-effective energy savings, meaning 1 to 2, 3, 4 times the return. Over these 9 years, we have invested over $50 million. Again, thanks to the fiscal capabilities of the county to look after the funds that you saw Mark listed. We're one of those ins and outs that comes through the county. The return, as I mentioned, is better than you can put into any bank, whether it be a local or a Bank of America, because we're really giving you a return of 3 to 4 times that investment. You can't get it anywhere else. The savings are starting to add up in terms of peak energy reductions, not just the monthly energy savings on your bill in kilowatt hours, but we're adding up to megawatts, which is equivalent to about 2% of the Canal Electric generating plant. Every bulb, every hot water heater that we've been able to make efficient over these 9 years is additive. So we're really starting to become a little force to be reckoned with. The savings, when you add them up over these many years, is as well 103,600 megawatt hours. As we know, the cost of power all in delivered is about still 18, 19 cents. So that adds up to a savings of about $20.7 million per year of what consumers otherwise would have been paying had it not been for participation in these programs. It really is a tremendous story, and I'm happy to be here to share it with you because you've supported us, and I think you can take this message out, to others to say this is really great stuff. It's not that we're the only ones doing it either. We are part of a new statewide planning process that supports our programs on a multi-year basis going forward, which really provides a nice basis for planning, both hiring resources and delivering services to customers through long-term contracts. We have also, as I think many of you know, significant funding increases. Years ago, as Charlotte, one of our founding board members from the town of Yarmouth, remembers, we managed about $4 to $5 million a year. This year's budget that we take extremely serious because it's a bigger budget than ever before is $18 million. Next year will be over $20 million. And the year after that, provided we, bless you, follow what the statutory requirements are on us, as long as we can find all cost-effective measures, we go after them. That's what we're required to do by law. We also have to not only report to our local governing board, and happy to come and speak to you folks, but I travel to Boston quite often. We also come under the review of the Energy Efficiency Advisory Council, the DPU, and there are various working groups that all chime in with, why aren't you looking at this, why aren't you doing that? And frankly, we've got really active participation that helps our programs. The next slide at the bottom just talks about where the programs have built, from prescriptive type measures where we give people rebates, to getting more of a system-based approach, to where we're at the top of the pyramid. How can we do comprehensive things, whether it be in individuals' homes or businesses? So that's kind of the energy pyramid. Yes.
Can I ask a question about the, you were talking about long-term planning. Is there any plans to spread the load so that people are encouraged to use electricity in the early mornings or later in the evenings to get that energy spread that's so efficient? Have you partnered with the state or advocated on those behalfs?
Within the Green Communities Act, there are pilot programs underway for what's called dynamic pricing pilots. NSTAR has not chosen to use the CAPE for that, but we are monitoring what they're doing in the communities they've picked. Later on, I'll talk to you about a pilot program that we're doing that actually will able to dovetail with that, where consumers can actually see their own use, and come the day that pricing signals may be able to change, we'll actually be able to be ready to dovetail that together.
Wash your clothes there.
It's absolutely, it makes sense, because when the grid is lower at night, power really is cheaper, but we don't see it today in our rates, but we should. Again, the slide about mining deeper savings is really all about the enhancements that we've made to the programs. A home energy audit now, we do every bulb that a customer wants us to put in. Every bulb that we can put in, we do. We integrate with air sealing. In other words, it's not just about insulation, it's tightening up all those holes in the home. And we do that free of charge now, where it's built into the design of the program. We also increase the rebates for heating and hot water systems that we install. The rebates are much higher than they ever have been. And the other thing under the home energy audits is the heat loan, which is a zero-interest loan. We buy down the interest, frankly, from not enough financial institutions participate, but we do have a few, but it makes customers go even further because they can borrow up to $15,000 and we buy down the interest rate. So we've seen a really uptick in that. The new construction program, I won't go into a lot of detail, but we really do canvass the whole marketplace to address lighting, HVAC. You may not be aware of it, but on the Cape, we are a summer peaking operation. So cooling is particularly the load that we want to go after, finding ways to be more efficient. As our population increases in the summer, the burden put on the grid is primarily air conditioning driven. So we really have focused on doing that. And then I'll talk a little bit more about the commercial industrial programs further on, but we're really trying to be more comprehensive and succeeding at that with commercial buildings. So here's the last 3 points, the takeaways for you. Is you should know that we are being very innovative, not just locally, but working with all types of partners. Combined heat and power, it's called micro CHP, where in homes and businesses they can actually generate their own electricity, is something we're promoting right now. Solid state lighting, referred to as LEDs, you have heard about them, they're coming very fast. You're going to be seeing later this year labels, just like you see the Energy Guide label on appliances. There are now going to be more consumer labeling by both the Department of Energy and the Federal Trade Commission to give consumers information about the choices of lighting, LEDs being one of them. Super high efficient heating and hot water equipment I talked about briefly. We're looking at more installations of central air conditioning tied into the way we button up a home and a business to make it more efficient. The next bullet is really how do we bring together both the energy efficiency, demand response, kind of what John Bowman was mentioning, is to get the consumer to know the time of use when you use electricity should vary in terms of the price you pay. So we're trying to marry demand response, energy efficiency, renewables together. Advancing building practices. As you know, we've really advanced already in 55 homes on the Cape and Vineyard, green, affordable construction, and we want to make that more mainstream through our incentives. And again, on the point John had made about monitoring our electric use real time, we have some pretty impressive results of savings that consumers are making just on their own by us giving them a device or a computer screen that sees what their real-time use is. And when they see, there's a blip, they're literally calling home and saying, what are you doing? Turn off the washer. So it's really getting people more engaged in behavior change that goes beyond devices and measures that we can install. The next takeaway, number 2, is you should be really pleased because I think we've got some early signs of recovery through energy efficiency that may be in the offing. We have over 70 new construction projects in queue. These are projects that we're not going to finish up this year, but we're working with business leads, municipal leads for new buildings that will be constructed and built with our assistance in 11/12/2013. Really is great. So the message has finally come through loud and clear that we've been saying to them, don't call us when you move in, call us when you're just at the creative thinking stage. So it is happening. Relative to the retrofit activity that we've got, we have over 300 participants that we expect to complete just this year. Overall, in the commercial sector, businesses, we're likely to deliver over $7 million of benefits just this year. We have more than 50 town municipal projects within the programs that we expect to be serving this year. It really is a great message to be taken away. The number 3 takeaway, which is very unique to us, the other state program administrators do not sit in the same position that we do. I think as a public entity, we're very unique in that we can go after additional grants that a private utility cannot. So we were very successful last year of receiving the USDA Agricultural Small Business Grant, $100,000, that is dovetailing well with our small business audit. We're looking at efficiency of greenhouses, of pumps, of motors, of control systems, in addition to what we typically do with light bulbs and insulation. The other thing is, again, thanks to Maggie's very hard work with DOE, the Energy Efficiency Conservation Block Grants, we get a direct allocation of over $700,000. Again, that's going directly to things that are significant that we wouldn't otherwise have been able to do alone. So, again, the little note I put at the top is we're really maximizing ratepayer benefits at a minimum cost. These are not charges that are going on the electric bill. And then last is really just a big thank you because we've got recognition from Energy Star. The National Energy Education Development Project, the NEED project, has recognized our program specifically for what we've done. NEED, I think you know, this year we've got 4 award-winning schools through the last school year. Sandwich was recognized as the national school leader in sustainability. We're a grassroots organization. I think through the efforts that we do to the public, I think this is a great opportunity to get the word out for anybody that's listening and wants to participate or learn more about our programs. Our 800 number is 800-797-6699. Do call it. But again, thanks to your leadership and support of our programs, take this message anywhere you'd like. It's a very good one. We've got very high customer, retailer, vendor, contractors that really make our program shine, and we think we make them shine too by the result. And then last but not least, as you know, we've got a very significant and what I consider a very large staff of 12 people that are local. They work very hard on our behalf every day, and happy to give you this report.
Kevin, you might mention that many of the Rise employees are local folks as well, provide contract services, and the Housing Assistance Corporation, who houses our, let's say, some of our contract audit personnel, are also local folks. So we're providing employment to many local people, and I would say that our employment is close to, it is at a livable wage level, as opposed to some of the other people here in the Cape.
Good point.
Oh, and one other question, if I may, before they start. Is this going to be available on the Cape Light Compact webpage?
Yes, all of our presentations, all the way back to 2001. If anybody wants them, they're available. And this will be posted tomorrow.
Kevin, I'm just curious as to how, if I'm a small business or a small town, how do I get in your queue? What's the application process for people to know?
It's a very simple thing. You can call the number. In many cases, we already are working with many of the towns, but again, 800-797-6699. Calls come right into the county, and we'll look up your past participation and may see that you supported the new, at the time, Truro Town Hall renovation, but if you've got DPW or Service Center or Wall Street.
Same thing for small businesses?
All calls come into one place, and we triage them out to where they're best able to serve.
John?
Once again, for the audience at home, if they call, if a homeowner calls the Cape Light Compact today, what's the lead time? When can they expect an energy audit in their office?
We are looking at a response of approximately 2 weeks, and again, expectation-wise, when they call us, we take all the information as to whether you're a business or you're a homeowner, or you're seasonal, what's the window of time you'd like us to call back, and then they'll get a call very shortly as to a convenient time to schedule.
This must be a perfect time for people to call ahead so that they can get ahead of the heating season.
Absolutely. And we've had a few chilly nights the last few days. The other thing is there was an insert, again, at a suggestion of one of the Cape Light Compact governing board members that was blasted into the newspaper. Some of us don't like it because they fall out on the ground when you're picking up the paper in the morning, but actually it has generated a very significant increase in phone calls. So I think, different ways we're trying to reach out to really increase participation, but the response has been very good.
Mr. Speaker, I just would like to say, as a member of the Assembly and as Vice Chairman of the Cape Light Compact Governing Board, I want to thank you, Maggie, and all of the other 12-plus people who are doing this and working so hard, and I'm just delighted to see the results. It's marvelous. It really is. As they say, we've come a long way, baby, from 1997, when we established the Cape Light Compact. We went through some really hard times, some ups and downs, and I think it's been worth it. So thank you.
So $20 million is your budget?
This year's budget is $18 million. Next year we're forecasting and approved by the DPU to go up to 24. Again, we need to be sticking to that all cost effective, so we do have to screen projects, but it's a tremendous responsibility.
I say this all the time, so don't take it the wrong way. I'm not being critical, but I remember 1997, and I remember the former Speaker of Town going around and Dr. Lee was also going around. And the primary focus of the Cape Light Compact then was a buying collaborative. In other words, it was to use the collaboration of all the towns to basically get a better rate. And that was the primary focus. And a lot of things happened since then that other organizations, other suppliers have cherry-picked other things. But you say there's been a net savings of $20 million over the course of 9 years?
Greater than that. That's an annual number.
That's an annual number. Okay, that makes more sense.
When we treat a home in 2002, those savings accrue year after year, and they really are a layered effect. When we have supported the construction of, for example, Energy Star home, that home is going to hopefully be in service for 100 years.
Now, have you done any long range as far as the price goes, as to what the total price of electricity purchased through the compact is compared to the total cost purchased in what used to be called a standard offer, somebody else?
And that's what I would say to you. That would be somebody else. I look after and have a full plate with energy efficiency. There are power supply experts on staff, Maggie is one, Jim Soares. And again, the handout that I provided on the insert promoting energy efficiency, if you look on the back, it does speak to an advisory that we offer customers that are considering competitive supply, because although we are an aggregation group for getting the best value for customers in electric pricing, we have brought new entrants to the market that are competing. And as you said, they're cherry picking or they're trying to tailor to the specific customer needs. We think that's great, but we have advised people to just look at the terms and conditions carefully before you sign or make the phone call and convert over. We've had, I think, many good results with customers that recognize, the stability that we're bringing in terms of price. It may not be a big savings, but I think we're bringing more stability in price.
Kevin, I want to add this, and it's very important, that regardless of how the price per kilowatt hour goes up of electricity, the energy conservation measures, when applied, will provide a permanent relief for all electric ratepayers. It's very important that the more you save, the less electricity is used, and that truly is a permanent savings. And plus the fact that we have this money to do that. It's a net savings, a net gain. It's a good thing, and no one who listens to this program should wait. They should get on the phone, call, and get in the queue so they can get that energy conservation to begin those savings.
All right, I agree, and I think for the people who are listening, the lesson is if you're worried about your electric bill, you probably are not going to do much about the price of natural gas, but if you apply to the energy efficiency program, you can lower your own individual costs much quicker than you can by complaining about the price of this.
There are figures that are available from the Cape Light Compact that shows that the price of natural gas has been increasing and the amount of electricity that's being used on the Cape has been decreasing. And you'll also see, if you take a look at those, at that information that's available, that where there had been a peak, let's say in 2007 in August, you'll see that peak has been flattened out. And if you did the regression, you begin to see that it's a general trend downward with regard to electric use, which is the permanent saving for all the electricity users on the Cape. So the price of natural gas is going to go up. The effect of the Gulf and the availability of fossil fuels is putting pressure on the price of fuel, which will affect the cost of electricity. But savings is for a prudent person. Get that energy conservation audit done. Take those measures that are recommended, and you will save, and that savings will be permanent.
Anybody any comments on this? Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I agree with Charlie. You do a terrific job. I'm going to ask for if you don't mind my taking over the meeting for a minute. Communications from members of the public. I think, would you care to say anything, Mr. Ryan? Did you have a question for the Assembly?
I just have a question as to when the report from the Health and Human Services Standing Committee meeting of August 4th, when will that be made to the Assembly? report.
We could make that report. No, you're talking about the report of the August.
August 4th, there was a meeting of the Standing Committee Health and Human Services, and I presume that there's going to be a report made to the full assembly. And as you can understand, I'd be quite interested in being present for that. So I'm wondering when that's going to happen.
We did make that already. Julia made that.
You did it the very day of the meeting?
Yes, we did.
Okay.
And actually, you can probably find the minutes. It's in our meeting minutes, which we can.
Okay, I will look at that.
Thank you.
It's also available on the internet.
I will look there also.
Like the video.
Thank you, Chairman. How's the meeting?
Well, that's all I have.
Mr. Chairman? Yep. Mr. Speaker? When we opened the meeting, we didn't have the approval of the August 5th minutes.
Yeah, we can't take any action.
We have now, Mr.
No, we don't know.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you walked in and that made it. I'm sorry.
Unless he moved to Bourne.
0.75%.
Not that Truro doesn't get any respect, but
Very sorry.
Love Truro. Very low.
we like Truro. Yes, Truro's a terrific. Not many people, but it's a terrific place.
Are we open for discussion or?
Well, yeah. I mean, we can. Well, Lee.
I don't think you can convene.
You can't convene.
No action.
Or can we talk?
Can we speak? The commission's meeting is open. You can ask the commission any question you wish.
You can ask.
The bad news is we can't adjourn either, so we're just stuck here until somebody shows up.
Well, Mr. Speaker,
yes.
I just have one point. We have a very important program that the county is promoting about buying local. And I think George makes a good point here about the banking business. And I think we should try to look into whether Cape Cod 5 or Siemens or some other local bank could provide a level of services in one of the areas. I mean, there are lots of different areas here that Bank North is fulfilling, this need. And because the profits that are made by that bank do stay local, they are then lent out to local developers and builders and municipal projects. And I think it would be a good example to set that the county is also trying to buy local if possible.
I have a question, Mr. Speaker, on the buy local situation. Why are we limiting buy local to produce? Why can't we talk about televisions and other merchandise items? Why can't we increase the ability of buying from local vendors in many ways and not just about produce?
Steve lives on the table.
No, I agree, but I mean, as we do our promotions for it, we could expand the
I think I know what Leo's going to say, but I'll give it over.
But there is a buy local program that is not county, and I know WCAI has a buy local program, and they put out a list of all the people that are being supported, and they should support a discount program for buying local for every product.
The only thing I wanted to add to that is that the Buy Local, Buy Fresh campaign is a national campaign. It's a trademark national campaign. And the County Extension Service has worked through in coordination with the national campaign to use their logo, Buy Fresh, Buy Local. So although it may have started and its roots were to help and to inspire people to buy produce locally, it doesn't mean that we are narrowed by that. I think if we're going to stay within the parameters of the national concept of it, yes, but certainly, we could probably extend our suggestion to local people to, to in fact encourage people to buy locally, whether it be T-shirts or hats or whatever, and support small stores. But the campaign itself was designed for produce.
Yeah, and that's what the grants are
intended
really for. But I would say Bill Clark has indicated, I'm not sure maybe to you, that in 11, they're expanding it to try to work with fishermen. I know the Hook Fishermen's Association is working with Bill Clark to try to work something so that they can, instead of all the fishermen driving the fish up to Boston to the fish market up there and then trucking it back to Cape Cod to the restaurants, to try to set up a method where the local fishermen deal directly with the local market on Cape Cod. I mean, the issues are bigger than we think they are. There's middlemen out there, and there's wholesalers and distributors and blah, 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 blah. There's been a whole history of these markets set up. And so you have to sometimes undo some of this, hundreds of years, basically, of this marketing. So, but they're working on it, and I know Bill is trying to do it with the Hook Fishermen's Association, so it's little steps. And we will certainly look at the banking aspect of that. I don't have an issue looking at that. My frustration sometimes is we deal with a global marketplace, whether we like it or not. And you can buy a Chevrolet that's made in Canada, and you can buy a Toyota that's made in Tennessee. But what if that Toyota's pieces are made in Japan and shipped to Tennessee and assembled in Tennessee? What does all of that mean? A lot of it loses its meaning nowadays.
President, we have a wonderful opportunity right now with regard to this issue, because one of the issues in terms of procurement is also procurement of services. Right. And we're in the legislative election season, and you have several people that that are putting themselves out to represent your interests. I think that this is, since it would require legislation to change the procurement process for services because of the issue with regard to prevailing wage, for example, this would be a great opportunity to find out what those folks that are putting themselves forward to run for public office, because the state legislation would have a great deal to do with opening that door. So I think that I think your question as posed as an opportunity to see whether or not those folks that are putting themselves forward have any appetite to support it.
I'm sure a lot of them do. I can't speak for the candidates that I support, but I think that they probably would. And to me, it's not really a patriotic issue. It really is an efficiency issue. It's one of that's really what Mark just talked about. All of the middle, when we go to Stop and Shop, and how much of that money goes to the Netherlands for profits, and as opposed to supermarkets here who are supporting our schools and our road building programs and our programs. I think.
Well, the greatest percentage of businesses on the page are small businesses. They're not the large businesses. But this might be a great topic of conversation with the EDC and maybe with members of the Chamber of Commerce. Having a joint discussion between them, I think might prove quite interesting, and maybe they have some good ideas about how we might be able maybe to have our own buy local program as opposed to, not maybe mimicking or mirroring to some respects the buy fresh, buy local, but see if there isn't something that we could do that would really enhance the local businesses here.
We don't see three chambers, the chambers that are not the chamber, Cape Cod Chamber of Commerce, intending to meet with our EDC in the first meeting in September, and I believe that that's a topic that they're very interested in. They represent, I believe, 11,000 businesses. They represent a substantial portion of the workforce that are located in the individual towns that the individual chambers of commerce represent, and it's something that they're very concerned with, because they want to make sure, since they're a member service organization like the Cape Cod Chamber of Commerce, to make sure that they are fairly representing opportunity for the businesses that they represent. And I was looking forward for those chambers of commerce and the EDC to talk and have a dialogue to begin that. But I think that what they're asking is part of that. And I invite you to come to that meeting, listen, and add your own voice to what's going on. That's Thursday, 5 o'clock, Thursday.
Oh yeah, the EDC does. But the other piece to that is too is supporting local businesses business also sustains jobs and things. Yeah. I mean, it has a lot more than just buying. It's the whole idea of local people being employed.
The issue, I guess the issue I have with the banks is, I'm not a banking specialist, if you have a balance in their own checkbook, but when banks are chartered, they have a certain, depending on how they're chartered, they have a certain obligation to spend a certain amount of money in the neighborhoods that they get the money from. It's a lot easier for them to collect all that money from you. You know, you and me and everybody who have our little accounts, and they say, hey, well, we go over, we'll lend it to Donald Trump, he'll build a casino, and he'll borrow $300 million at 8%. Why should I bother with Ron, you know, who needs, you know, or wants to expand a business, or somebody he wants to have a mortgage, and so why should I bother with all these little people around here? I'll just give it to Citibank and they'll pay me whatever. So the idea is that even though they're obligated to spend a certain amount of money in the communities that they draw their funds from, we in turn can also look into where they spend their money. How much of the money that we put in there, how much of the money that's invested in a bank, let's say Cape Cod 5 or Bank North or something, is actually spent in the local communities, and how much is shipped, you know, to the mega deal, which is a lot easier to make. So, like I said, I'm not a banking expert, but obviously capital is important to small businesses that want to expand, they want to start up something, and you know, all of us have stood in front of bankers and look at us like, who the hell are you? You want to borrow what? You know, I'm too busy lending the guy who's going to lose it, you know, and in some big real estate deal than I am to deal with your petty mortgage. So maybe I'm being cynical, but
well,
I think it's something.
You know, banks have certain portfolio objectives. Some have what I call a residential portfolio objective, which may not serve a commercial, let's say, commercial entity. Some banks have a commercial, primarily a commercial, portfolio responsibility. The commercial portfolio, typically from those times when I was in the dreaded private sector, are less risk averse than a residential portfolio. So these are all things that factor in. But as I remember, what on the conversation with regard to when we looked at it years ago, that I can remember, it had a lot to do with whether or not the commercial services that were available from the bank met the needs of the, let's say, the global responsibility that the county has.
Well, thank you, Speaker. Just, and perhaps at the risk of tooting our own horn in the Lower Cape, the EDC, in fact, did sponsor a meeting a couple of weeks ago, in which all three county commissioners were present, and Dan Gray, and Felicia Penn, and Paul Niswicki were there, where we talked about...
And Dave Willey.
And David Willey was the one who called the meeting. And in fact, part of the discussion was about the chambers collaborating and using the new Wellfleet website that has been developed over the past year, discoverwellfleet.com, using some of that technology to not only bring tourist dollars and business into the Lower Cape in the off-season, but also to keep those dollars here through kind of the Buy Local program. We intend to work closely with the CDP. And that was kind of the initial salvo. So there are things that are happening, I would just say, on the local level and on a smaller regional level that are already working there. I think the EDC deserves some credit for having taken the initiative and calling this meeting, which is going to be followed up with.
And Paul, you're going to tie it into the RTA so that people don't think it's bus to Wellfleet, right?
Sure.
Yes, I want to clarify what I said earlier. And also, if you want to keep dollars here, you deal with local people. If you go over and spend money at Liam's, you know it's going to stay on the Cape. If you go to Wendy's, that money is gone the next day. And the same is true of Stop and Shops. You can deal with local people and you can feel very satisfied. What I meant about the county banking is that there should be some sort of current judgment of the cost of writing checks and any other function that the bank does. I think you mentioned 7 years ago.
It was quite a while ago.
Yeah.
I think it was the first year of the company.
You know, the world has turned over many times in 7 years. Countries have practically gone bankrupt. Banks have disappeared in the last 3 years. It's a different world. I had the pleasure of talking to the head of the largest housing agency on the Cape, and he told me that they negotiated with all of the large banks, and I'm not suggesting that community banks can service the county because they have limited skills. But he said that they picked one bank based on negotiations. That happened to be Sovereign, and Sovereign, of course, is a Spanish bank now, largely a Spanish bank. I'm not suggesting that it has to be an American bank, but we heard from Cape Light all the money they've saved. We should be concerned about the taxpayers' dollars as well and how they're invested.
The money that was being by Compact Disabled is for consumers. That's the savings that represents. That's not money that that the counties put in. We can put that money in people's pockets.
The towns on the Cape, the budgets and expenses of the towns on the Cape are approaching $1 billion a year. I haven't done last year's, but it was up to $750 million. If you could save 10% on $1 billion, it's $100 million. And I'm sure that the tax...
$10% on $1 million.
If you could save 10% by negotiating with the banks and various services, it's $100 million. Not,
to Mark's credit, he has provided what I would call a high level of fiscal management, fiduciary responsibility. The county is in the black.
We have to be
other counties are not.
We have to be as sharp as Cape Light. Thank you.
Anything else?
I just want to throw this out to people who aren't aware of it. There is actually an international movement on living economy. Very good. It's getting a lot of traction in Europe and in other places in this country, and it's a focus that looks at not buy local, but looking at the impact of every economic decision, what it has within the local economy. And it looks at not only consumer choices, but also business-to-business buying choices. It looks at leakage, looks at where money leaves the economy. So things like energy efficiency actually is part of sort of the living economy approach of looking at this whole dynamic piece and how each of our decisions impact it. And that's actually an area of the county as a whole I would love to see become more deeply involved in understanding the whole regional dynamics and putting into place policies that, perhaps look at this living economy movement, because we're exactly the kind of region where it's how we should be living, and there would be definite measurable benefits to us if we were to follow a path like that. But buy local isn't like just sort of an isolated, make one decision. It's a much bigger, integrated, international approach to how do you sustain individual places.
The National Graduate School in Falmouth has put forward a request to support get a grant to support an examination of something that sounds very much like what you're talking about as far as sustainability. We are participating as part of that. If they do get that grant, I think that'll be part of the evaluation of what they're looking at, and I'll keep you advised. Hopefully, we will receive that. I'm kind of excited about the fact that it is looking at how we can maintain or develop a sustainable approach to living here. There are many issues that we need to continue to address to reach what I've been looking for years, which is how do we arrive at a level of livable, not livable wage, but livable income, because that seems to be the thing that's lacking here on the Cape. That there are many jobs that that are available that require what I would call an involuntary partnership of that job with local government in order to support the services that those jobs need. Somehow we have to identify what that path is, and I'm hoping that that this the National Graduate School attempt will at least give us some answers. The other thing you should be aware of is a nice segue to the fact that we're about to start an operational audit of the county itself.
Not an audit, an assessment.
Assessment.
We're being audited?
But the assessment would, would indeed look at our operation and how we are contributing or not to supporting, the goals of our constituents in all of Barnstable County. This is something that the Pat basically has taken as a focus and a thrust, and certainly something that I support. I'm looking forward to beginning that, and keep you advised as we get information from that as what the progress is.
It will be on our agenda next week. Yeah.
Okay. Is there anything else? I guess I need a motion to adjourn. We can't vote on it, so I guess we'll just adjourn.
It does state that you can meet and adjourn from time to time.
So we're adjourned.
So you can adjourn.
Ken?